I'm poor. Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay? No? Okay, I'll use this then. Okay, I'm Paul Carmody. I'm a lecturer here in geography, and I want to talk to you today about what it's like to do geography at Trinity College. Just before I forget, can you please, when you're leaving, exit through this exit here, because there's a lot of people coming and going outside, and there'll be a new group waiting to come in. So when you leave at the end, can you please remember to leave by this exit here. Okay, so what's geography about at college? What kinds of things do you cover? What's the structure of the course? Okay, there's a YouTube video which you can, I'm not going to show it to you now, but you can take down the address if you like, or just do a search for Geography Matters right here, right now, and that'll pull up that video for you on YouTube. So you can watch that in your own time. I want to spend more time to you talking with you about what it's like to do geography here. Okay, so when you say geography, if you're out and about talking to people and you say you're a geographer, oftentimes people will say to you, you must know all of the countries, all of the different rivers in Ireland, all of the capital cities around the world, and so on and so forth. But there's quite a difference between geography at school, or the junior cert or leaving cert, and then the kind of approach that you take in college. And in college, geography, it's more self-directed, it's more about self-learning, studying by yourself, engaging in the classes, speaking out in lectures, having tutorials. Okay, so that's one thing that's different. Second thing that's different is we're interested in the why, the understanding, the explaining why things are the way that they are, why things are where they are, and how did it come to be like that. You can always go to an atlas or onto the internet or to an encyclopedia to find a fact, to find the name of a river or a capital city. What's more important, and you can't necessarily get from any one individual book, is that kind of analytical skill to understand why a mountain is where it is, why a city is where it is, why some places are rich and other places are poor. Okay? So that's the kind of skill that we're trying to build or inculcate in you during your 4 years in college. Second set of skills which makes geography a little bit different from some of the other subjects, at least in arts, I know this is the science talk, but is that we have a focus on applied skills. So you'll do things like geographic information systems. How many people have heard of GIS? Geographic information systems, anybody heard that term? No? Geographic information systems is computerized mapping, okay? And you use a GIS or geographic information system to solve all sorts of problems. Say you're interested in siting a sewage facility. What kinds of things, if you were a planner in Dublin City Council and you wanted to site a new sewage processing facility, what kinds of things would you have to consider? You'd want it to be nearby water? Yeah, that might be, you might need water to process it, right? You mightn't want to locate it beside residential areas. So you could do all of these computer-generated maps and see land prices, where there was water availability, all of those kinds of things to come up with the best solution for that problem. The other things that you do in geography are things like statistics, which is again another skill that employers find very useful. I often get asked at these things, well, what kinds of jobs do you actually get with a geography degree? And the answer to that is very varied. Some of our graduates who I was talking to recently, one of them is a buyer for Brown Thomas, another one is working for Dublin Airport Authority. A lot of people go into business, some people go into teaching, okay? But we do focus on these applied skills, GIS, statistics, getting you to do your own research as well. So in the summer between your third and fourth year, you can do a big research or a fairly big research project, which is again a great skill in terms of writing, doing research and analysis, you know, that employers find useful as well. Now, the traditional tool of geographers is the map. So back in the 17th, 18th century, this was the main tool that geographers used, right? And maps are a two-dimensional representation of three-dimensional phenomena. Now, the thing about a map is because it's in 2D, because it's flat, you can never accurately represent a three-dimensional phenomena in 2 dimensions. Something has to give. The distance or the area. Okay? You might be able to keep certain features, but something has to give in that transformation from 3 dimensions down to 2 dimensions. Increasingly, what geographers use are geographic information systems. So these computer programs which enable you to process large amounts of digital data captured by things like satellites. So you can see this is a picture of a satellite here. Maybe you're interested in things like crop yields in Africa and the light signature that different crops give off. You can pick that up on a satellite and predict what crops are growing well or what the yield might be. One of my colleagues, to give you another example of the kinds of things that can be done with geographic information systems, is creating a database about conflict in Africa. And what she is doing is she has about 30 people working for her. And they look at all of the African newspapers and pick up any instance of conflict where someone has been killed or injured, and then they geocode that. They put it into a geographic information system. Okay. So we use these different tools now. This is a picture of a digital elevation model. So this is this kind of three-dimensional representation that you can achieve in a computer that you couldn't achieve just with an ordinary map. DEM, digital elevation model. So what kinds of issues are geographers interested in? What are the kind of particular problems or thematic areas that we're interested in? Well, we're interested in the big global, or some of us at least are interested in the big global problems. Things like international development. Why is it that half of the population of sub-Saharan Africa lives on less than the equivalent of what $1.25 would buy you in the United States in a day? So maybe a cup of coffee. And yet, over half of the population of sub-Saharan Africa is living on a lower income than that. How do we understand that? How do you go about resolving that problem? We're interested in environmental change. So we're interested in global climate change, which is going to be the mega challenge facing society around the world. Sorry guys, can you stop talking there in the middle? Just trying to, yeah, okay. So we're interested in global climate change, global environmental change. And there are different types of global environmental change. Global climate change is one of these. And we have a number of people in the department who are interested in things like sea level change through time. How do we measure that? What are the implications of sea level rise or decline? We have other people who look back. One of the professor of geography spends a lot of time in Uganda and Rwanda out on swamps, pouring down into these swamps, and he's able to unearth pollen from tens of thousands of years ago and see what kind of plant life was in Uganda, in these swamps in Uganda and Rwanda tens of thousands of years ago. And what can that tell us about what the future environment might look like? We look back into the past and see when there were similar environmental conditions to what we might expect under global climate change models and scenarios. How can we predict then what the environment might look like in the future? What kinds of plants might there be? What kind of crops can be grown? So on. We're interested in globalization. this idea that the world is becoming increasingly interlinked through flows of trade and investment. You look at your clothes, look at the tags on your clothes. Where do you think those are coming from? Where do you think most of our clothes comes from? China, okay, Vietnam, Thailand, Turkey, okay? Low wage, low income economies. We're interested in these kinds of phenomena as well. This is something which is becoming more of interest to geographers as well. This is a picture of, on the left-hand side there, the Darfur stove, which was developed at the University of California, Berkeley. And it's a low-carbon stove which reduces the amount of firewood that people have to use, right, to cook their food. And this has all sorts of geographic implications. You find that often women in particular in sub-Saharan Africa have to walk for 2, maybe 3 hours a day to gather firewood to cook the family meals. Okay? But if you can design a stove which uses less firewood, that's going to have a big impact on their lives and on the geography of their everyday lives. There's someone in engineering in Trinity who is working on developing a low-carbon stove which lets you charge a mobile phone or run a light bulb, okay, off it as well. So in addition to being able to cook food, you're also able to use these other devices. This is an example of a water purifier, where, again, a big issue for people in the developing world, access to clean water. How do you transport that water? How do you purify it? And this is an example of something which achieves both of those objectives. We're able to transfer the water, and at the same time, as the drum moves, it purifies it. And these are examples of what's called inverse infrastructure. Infrastructure that moves with people, rather than having these big fixed infrastructures, roads, railway networks and so on. You have these examples of inverse infrastructure which move with the people. Okay? So they're much less expensive and they're fit for purpose, if you like. Okay, so what kinds of things, what are the big questions, the key questions in geography? What are some of the things that we're interested in? Why are some places rich and some poor? Is it to do with physical geography? Is it to do with the fact that soils are poorer in certain places? Or is it to do with global power relations? Is it to do with transnational companies and the power of big institutions and governments around the world which are able to structure things to meet their own needs and ends? Why do some places suffer from political instability? Most of you in your pockets have something. What am I talking about? Money. I could be talking about money. And we used to call the money we use guineas, right? Because the gold was from West Africa, Guinea and West Africa. Actually talking about your mobile phones. And the mineral that makes your mobile phone work is something called coltan. It's an electrical capacitator, which means it has the ability to store and release an electrical charge. And without that, our mobile phones, our iPods, our computers wouldn't work. Where does a lot of that mineral come from? Well, it comes from a country in Central Africa called the Democratic Republic of Congo, which, as you may know, is one of the most conflict-affected countries in the world. And a lot of the conflict there is around access to and control of this mineral coltan. So you'll see how the kind of global informational economy is actually connected to conflict in different parts of the world. How do we understand landscapes? Why mountains are where they are? Plate tectonics. Why are there skyscrapers in certain cities and not in other cities? So these are other questions. mentioned this to you briefly previously, which is the impacts of global climate change. You're all familiar with the fact that we had floods a few weeks ago. I mentioned this in the lecture earlier, that I have a friend who designs supermarkets, and in those supermarkets they have tanks which can take about 100 millimetres of water in a day, flood tanks to prevent flooding of supermarkets. They build them for 100-year events. Okay? So it's only meant to happen that we get 100 millimetres of rain in a day every 100 years or so. And we've had 2 of those in the last 5 years, 2 of these so-called 100-year events. Okay? So global climate change is affecting Ireland. In Africa, the UN estimates that the value of African crops will fall by up to 90% by the end of the century as a result of global climate change, unless something changes dramatically in the intervening period. Okay, health geography. Health geographers are interested in questions about how diseases emerge, how do they spread across space, and how can they be combated or prevented. A couple of maps from National Geographic magazine talking about swine flu, geography of swine flu. And some people talk about diseases of globalization, that we have these new diseases, swine flu, avian flu, HIV and AIDS, which are emerging and spreading around the world as a result of air transport. So these are the maps showing you, first of all, the risk of spread up here, so that if everywhere was the same in terms of its economic capacities, this would be the geography of the risk of spread, right? If you were just looking at environmental conditions, these would be the places where swine flu would spread. Okay. Down here, you have capacity to contain. Okay. So this is a function not just of environmental conditions, but also of economic conditions. Do governments, do countries have the money to invest in containing the spread of diseases like swine flu? So, for example, in Ireland a few years ago, people had the hand sanitizers. In Trinity, there were these hand sanitizers installed all over the college, right? And that was one of the ways in which swine flu was contained. And then the third map showing you the risk of emergence. Okay, so where was swine flu most likely to emerge? Hong Kong grows about 50% of its own food, and you have millions and millions of chickens densely packed and pigs packed together in these mega farms in Hong Kong. That makes it one of the likely places for this to emerge. Okay, there are 4 ways of doing geography at Trinity. You can come in through science, your 071. You can come in through arts, the 2-subject moderatorship, where you study geography in combination with another subject like economics or German. And there are 2 new degrees as well. Geography and geology. If you're interested in physical geography and geology, you can do earth science, which is a new degree, and also geography and politics. So there's 4 ways to come into geography. In terms of the course structure, the first and second year, you don't have to have done geography in school to do geography in college. Okay? So there's no assumed prior background. You can come in and we don't assume that you're familiar with the different geographic concepts. The first year and second year are really about bringing you up to speed in the 3 main areas of geography, which are physical geography, environmental geography or human-environment relations, and then human geography. And you do courses on collecting geographic data and analysing it. So what are the different ways that geographers collect data? Interviews, surveys, satellite data, coring for pollen samples, as I talked to you about earlier. In third and fourth year you get to specialise. So you can see some of the courses that you're able to take in third and fourth year there: African development, hydrology, coastal processes, and so on. And then another thing that's distinctive about geography is the emphasis on actually getting out and getting your hands dirty, getting out into the field, doing some of the interviews and coring work yourself. So we run a number of field trips in Ireland and in previous years internationally as well. So some examples of places we have taken students in the past: Iceland, Mallorca, field trip to Kenya on one of our master's programs. We have another master's programs where students spend 3 months in Rwanda in East Africa. We actually got to meet the president of Rwanda. He hosted a state dinner for them there during the summer. Okay, so those are our master's programs. We also have about 30 PhD students. So if you come into geography, they'll be teaching you in tutorials as well. You can see some of the things that they're studying. They do all sorts of different topics, again, all around the world. Okay. Just briefly, one of the things that is distinctive about the program here is that we engage in what's called research-led teaching. So the idea that we actually bring our research into the classroom. We tell you about the research that we're doing in different parts of the world. One of the things I'm involved in is a project looking at the impacts of mobile phones, email and internet in Tanzania and South Africa. So is this something, we hear a lot of hype about the global information revolution, but does this really let African businesses change the way that they operate? Another area I've been working on the last few years is to do with the so-called new scramble for Africa. Why is it that countries like China, India, Korea are buying up huge tracts of land, sometimes the size of Belgium or Luxembourg or Switzerland, to grow corn, biofuels? So corn can be a biofuel. You can convert it into ethanol and run your car off it. Why is it that this is happening at the current juncture? If you're interested in finding out more about geography, you can go to our website. There is the undergraduate handbook there. You can look through and see all of the different individual modules and the kinds of things that they cover. Okay. Finish with a quote from Michael Palin: "You can travel the seas, poles and deserts and see nothing. To really understand the world, you need to get under the skin of the people and the places. In other words, learn about geography." Okay, if you have any questions that I haven't addressed, please feel free to email me. My email is on the website. Pori Carmody, okay, is my name, so you can email me. I'll take any questions from the floor. We have a few minutes left. And I'll also hang around for a few minutes if you want to talk to me individually as well. Okay? No questions, then we will leave it there. But there is one, yes. The points, it varies depending on which route you're coming in. So if you want to do geography and sociology, it's 415. I think geography and maths is 515. Geography and political science is around 450, but it varies depending on which of the routes that you come in on. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Yeah. The jobs question again. As I say, a lot of our students go into business. A lot of them go on and do graduate diplomas in business, in teaching. So geography oftentimes kind of serves as a stepping stone to something else. So a lot of people, if they like geography, they enjoy studying it, they get some of these practical writing, analytical, statistical skills, and then they go and oftentimes do something else. Either they study or they get internships or whatever. But you find them working in business, government, planning, teaching, a wide range of careers. Yep. Okay, the main difference is if you come in through science, you only do a small amount of geography in your first and second year, right? Because you're doing these other subjects, chemistry and biology and so on. So you do a bit more geography if you come in through arts. If you come in through science, you specialise in third and fourth year in geography only. So you do pure geography in third and fourth year. if you come in through science and you decide that's what you want to do, right? You can choose geography or you could choose biochemistry, depending on what your interests are. So you're not locked in first year into doing geography through science. If you come in through arts, you do geography and economics, let's say, equally for the first 3 years, and then you can either keep them both in fourth year, or you can specialise in geography or economics in fourth year. Okay. Any other questions? All right, if not, we will leave it there. And please remember to exit through this door, and I'll hang around for a few minutes as well.